The bitter wind howled through the Wyoming Territory of 1875, carrying with it a blinding sheet of snow as Rebecca Blackburn struggled to maintain control of her horse. At 23, she had never faced a blizzard of this magnitude alone, but her father's sudden illness had forced her hand. The journey to Casper for medicine had seemed manageable that morning when the sky held only a hint of gray. But now, as daylight faded and the temperature plummeted, she realized her grave miscalculation. Rebecca's chestnut mare whinnied anxiously, fighting against the gusting wind. Her gloved hands, numb despite the thick leather, could barely maintain their grip on the reins. The small parcel of medicine tucked inside her coat felt insignificant compared to the mounting danger surrounding her. "Come on, Maple," she urged, her words instantly swallowed by the howling storm. Just a little farther. But how much farther? The landmarks she knew so well had vanished beneath the white blanket of snow. Her father's ranch, her home, could be miles away or just beyond the next ridge. The disorientation made her stomach churn with fear. As darkness descended, Rebecca's hopes dimmed. Her thoughts turned to her father, lying weak and feverish back at their ranch. Without the medicine, would he survive the night? The guilt weighed as heavy as the snow collecting on her shoulders. The mare stumbled, nearly sending Rebecca tumbling into a snowdrift. Her body was growing dangerously cold, her thoughts increasingly sluggish. She knew enough about frontier living to recognize the signs of hypothermia setting in. "Please," she whispered to no one in particular, perhaps to God if he was listening. "I need help." As if in answer to her desperate plea, a faint light appeared in the distance, flickering like a beacon through the swirling white. Rebecca blinked several times, certain her mind was playing tricks. But the light remained, steady and unwavering. With renewed determination, she guided Maple toward the glow. As they drew closer, the shadowy outline of a small cabin materialized from the blizzard's veil. Smoke curled from the chimney, promising warmth within. Rebecca nearly wept with relief. She urged her horse the final few yards, dismounted with trembling legs, and practically fell against the rough-hewn door. Her knocks were weak at first, then more urgent as her fear of freezing outweighed her caution about strangers. The door swung open suddenly, revealing a tall figure silhouetted against the amber glow of firelight. "Good Lord, woman," a deep voice exclaimed. "What in tarnation are you doing out in this storm?" Rebecca tried to respond, but the words froze in her throat as her legs gave way beneath her. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her with surprising gentleness. "I've got you," the voice said, softer now. "You're safe." Through frost-laden eyelashes, Rebecca caught a glimpse of her rescuer, a man with a weathered face, perhaps in his early 30s, with concerned blue eyes studying her intently. "My horse," she managed to croak. "I'll tend to your mount. First, let's get you warm." He carried her inside the cabin and placed her near the crackling fireplace. The sudden heat against her frozen skin sent shards of pain racing through her body, making her gasp. "Easy now," the man said, removing her snow-encrusted coat with efficient movements. "My name's Jackson Evans. Most folks just call me Jack." "Rebecca," she whispered through chattering teeth. "Rebecca Blackburn, Miss Blackburn, you're half frozen. What possessed you to travel in weather like this?" With shaking hands, she reached inside her dress and pulled out the small parcel. "Medicine." "For my father, he's ill pneumonia, I think." Jack took the package and set it aside carefully. "Noble intention, but foolish all the same. You could have died out there." "I still might if I don't get this to him," Rebecca said, attempting to rise but finding her limbs uncooperative. "You're not going anywhere tonight," Jack stated firmly. "That storm's only getting worse." As if to emphasize his point, the wind howled fiercely, rattling the cabin's windows. Rebecca wanted to protest, but exhaustion washed over her in overwhelming waves. "I need to go back out," Jack said, wrapping a thick blanket around her shoulders. "Get your horse settled in the lean-to. Don't move from that spot." Rebecca nodded weakly, clutching the blanket tightly around herself as Jack disappeared into the storm. The fire's warmth began to penetrate her frozen body, bringing with it an almost unbearable tingling sensation. She examined her surroundings through pain-blurred eyes. The cabin was small but meticulously kept. A single room served as kitchen, living area, and sleeping quarters, with a sturdy bed positioned against the far wall. Shelves lined with books suggested her rescuer was more than just a simple rancher. A few personal items dotted the space: a photograph in a silver frame, a harmonica on the table, a well-worn Bible. The door burst open as Jack returned, bringing with him a gust of frigid air and swirling snow. He quickly secured the door against the elements. "Your mare's taken care of," he reported, shaking snow from his coat. "Fine animal, she'll be warm enough in the lean-to." "Thank you," Rebecca managed. "For everything," Jack nodded, moving to a small stove where a pot of something fragrant simmered. "Can you eat?" "You need to warm from the inside out." The thought of food made Rebecca's stomach clench painfully, reminding her how long it had been since she'd eaten. "Yes, please." He ladled stew into a bowl and brought it to her, along with a cup of hot coffee. The first spoonful nearly scalded her throat, but the warmth spread through her chest like liquid sunshine. "Slowly now," Jack cautioned, settling himself in a chair nearby. "Where's your ranch?" Between careful sips, Rebecca explained. "North of here, Blackburn Ranch. It's just my father and me now, since my mother passed 3 years ago." Jack's expression softened. "I know of it, Joseph Blackburn's place," Rebecca nodded. "You know my father, by reputation. Honest man, fair trader." Jack paused. "Your ranch is a good 15 miles from here." "You're lucky you found my cabin." The realization of how close she'd come to perishing in the blizzard sent a shiver through Rebecca that had nothing to do with cold. "I didn't think the storm would hit so quickly." "Wyoming weather can turn faster than a rattlesnake," Jack replied, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "Especially this time of year." As Rebecca finished her meal, exhaustion claimed her completely. She fought to keep her eyes open, knowing she needed to return to her father, yet her body refused to cooperate. Jack seemed to read her thoughts. "You need rest, Miss Blackburn. We'll see about getting you home when the storm breaks." "But my father won't be helped by you killing yourself in a blizzard," Jack finished firmly. "You can take my bed, I'll sleep by the fire." Rebecca wanted to protest the arrangement but lacked the strength. With Jack's assistance, she made her way to the bed, collapsing onto it gratefully. The last thing she remembered was Jack's gentle hands pulling a quilt over her and his deep voice saying, "Rest now. You're safe here." When Rebecca awoke, sunlight streamed through the cabin windows. For a moment, confusion gripped her. Where was she? Then memories flooded back. The blizzard, the stranger named Jack, and most importantly, her father waiting for medicine. She sat up quickly, wincing at the soreness in her limbs. The cabin was empty, but the fire still burned steadily. Her clothes had been laid out near the stove, dried and warm. Rebecca dressed hastily, her mind racing with worry. How long had she slept? Was her father still alive? She found the package of medicine on the table and clutched it tightly. The door opened, and Jack entered, bringing with him the crisp scent of fresh snow and pine. His face, now clearly visible in daylight, was handsome in a rugged way, strong jawline partially obscured by a neatly trimmed beard, intelligent blue eyes that crinkled slightly at the corners. "You're awake," he observed. "How do you feel?" "Better," Rebecca admitted. "But I need to go." "My father, the storm's past, but there's 3 feet of fresh snow out there," Jack interrupted. "I've saddled your mare and mine. I'm taking you home." Rebecca blinked in surprise. "You don't have to do that." "I'm not sending a woman alone through snowdrifts that could swallow a horse whole," Jack stated matter-of-factly. "Besides, your father might need help." His concern touched her. "Thank you, Mr. Evans." "Jack," he corrected. "Can you ride?" Rebecca nodded. "I've been riding since I could walk." A small smile crossed his face. "I figured as much. Most ranch women around here can outride half the men." They ate a quick breakfast of coffee and biscuits before venturing outside. The world had transformed overnight into a blinding white landscape, beautiful but treacherous. Jack's black stallion stood patiently beside Maple, both animals outfitted for the difficult journey ahead. The ride was challenging, with Jack breaking trail through the deep snow. They spoke little, saving their energy for the journey, but Rebecca found herself studying her companion when he wasn't looking. There was something intriguing about this solitary man who had shown such kindness to a stranger. After several grueling hours, the familiar outline of Blackburn Ranch appeared on the horizon. Rebecca's heart quickened at the sight. Smoke rose from the chimney, a good sign that someone had maintained the fire. As they approached the ranch house, the door flew open. A figure emerged, bundled against the cold. Henrik Olsen, their ranch hand, a stoic Norwegian who had worked for her father for as long as Rebecca could remember. "Miss Rebecca," he called out, relief evident in his voice. "We feared the worst." Rebecca dismounted quickly. "Henrik." "My father is he, alive, but not well, miss. The fever grows worse." Without another word, Rebecca rushed inside, the precious medicine clutched in her hand. Jack followed, leading both horses toward the barn after a brief introduction to Henrik. The ranch house was warm but carried the distinct smell of sickness. Rebecca hurried to her father's bedroom, dread knotting her stomach. Joseph Blackburn lay in his bed, face flushed with fever, breathing labored and shallow. "Father," Rebecca whispered, kneeling beside him. His eyes fluttered open, clouded with delirium. "Eliza," he murmured, confusing Rebecca for her late mother. "No, father, it's Rebecca. I've brought medicine from Casper." She worked quickly, preparing the medicine as the doctor had instructed. Jack appeared in the doorway, removing his hat respectfully. "Can I help?" he offered quietly. Rebecca nodded, grateful for his presence. "Could you bring fresh water and clean cloths? We need to bring his fever down." Together, they worked to care for Joseph. Jack proved surprisingly adept, his large hands gentle as he helped position the sick man to take his medicine. Hours passed as they bathed Joseph's burning forehead with cool cloths, coaxed medicine and water into him, and changed sweat-soaked bedding. As evening approached, Henrik brought food which they ate in shifts, never leaving Joseph unattended. The old ranch hand eyed Jack with curiosity but asked no questions about the stranger's presence. Night fell, and Joseph's condition remained unchanged. Rebecca refused to leave his side despite Jack's suggestion that she rest. "You're exhausted," he said softly. "I can watch him." Rebecca shook her head stubbornly. "I can't leave him." Jack didn't argue. Instead, he brought a chair beside hers and sat down. "Then I'll stay too." In the quiet darkness, broken only by Joseph's ragged breathing, Rebecca found herself drawing strength from Jack's steady presence. She knew nothing about this man, yet trusted him implicitly. "Why do you live alone?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack was silent for so long that Rebecca thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and measured. "I was married once. Her name was Sarah. We had a small ranch near Laramie." He paused. "Cholera took her and our infant son 5 years ago." Rebecca's heart ached for him. "I'm so sorry, Jack," he shrugged, but she could see the pain etched in the lines of his face. "After I buried them, I couldn't stay there. Too many memories. I sold everything, bought that cabin, and kept to myself. Easier that way. Doesn't it get lonely?" "Better lonely than heartbroken," he replied simply. Rebecca understood better than most. After her mother's death, she'd watched her father retreat into himself, finding solace only in work and whiskey. She'd feared he would never emerge from his grief. "My mother died of influenza," she offered. "Father never quite recovered." Jack studied Joseph's sleeping form. "Yet he has you, that's something." "Is that why you helped me?" Rebecca asked. "Because you know what it's like to lose someone." Jack met her gaze, his blue eyes reflecting the dim lamplight. "I helped because it was the right thing to do. But yes, I suppose I understand what's at stake for you." Their conversation faded into comfortable silence as the night deepened. Eventually, Rebecca dozed off, her head drooping against Jack's shoulder. He remained motionless, unwilling to disturb her much-needed rest. Dawn broke with Joseph's condition unchanged. Rebecca administered another dose of medicine, praying it would finally take effect. Jack stepped outside to help Henrik with the morning chores, insisting that Rebecca eat something while he was gone. The day passed in a blur of anxiety and hope. Jack remained at the ranch, making himself useful wherever needed. Rebecca noticed how quickly Henrik had accepted his presence, the two men working together as if they'd known each other for years. As the second night of Joseph's illness approached, Rebecca's optimism began to fade. The medicine should have shown some effect by now, but her father's fever remained dangerously high. Jack found her in the kitchen, staring blankly at the wall, a cold cup of coffee untouched before her. "He's strong," Jack said gently. "Don't give up hope." Rebecca blinked back tears. "What if the medicine doesn't work? What if I was too late?" Jack pulled a chair close to hers. "You did everything possible, Rebecca. Sometimes that has to be enough." She looked at him, seeing compassion in his weathered face. "How did you bear it when you lost Sarah?" "Poorly," he admitted with a sad smile. "I was angry at God, at the world. I wanted to die myself for a while." He hesitated. "But eventually I realized that surviving was my burden to bear, and maybe someday it might not feel like a burden anymore." Rebecca impulsively reached for his hand. "Thank you for being here. You didn't have to stay." Jack's fingers tightened around hers. "I couldn't leave you to face this alone." Something shifted between them in that moment, a connection that went beyond the circumstances that had brought them together. Rebecca felt it like a physical change in the air, and from Jack's expression, she knew he felt it too. Their quiet moment was interrupted by Henrik calling urgently from Joseph's room. They rushed in to find him thrashing in his bed, incoherent with fever. "Hold him," Rebecca instructed, grabbing a cloth to wipe the sweat from her father's brow. Jack gently but firmly restrained Joseph's arms as he fought against invisible demons. "We need to cool him down," Jack said. "This fever's too high." Rebecca nodded, fighting panic. "Henrik, bring snow in buckets. We'll pack it around him." For the next hour, they worked desperately to lower Joseph's temperature. Henrik shuttled snow from outside while Rebecca and Jack packed it around Joseph's body, replacing it as it melted. Joseph alternated between violent shivering and terrible stillness. "Fight, father," Rebecca whispered fiercely. "Please fight." Midnight came and went. Joseph's struggles gradually subsided, but Rebecca couldn't tell if this was improvement or surrender. She sat beside him, holding his hand, willing her strength into his failing body. Jack remained close, his steady presence her only anchor in the storm of fear. Near dawn, Joseph's breathing suddenly changed. Rebecca straightened, instantly alert. "Jack." He moved to the bedside, placing a hand on Joseph's forehead. "The fever's breaking," he said, relief evident in his voice. As if to confirm his words, Joseph's eyes fluttered open, clear and lucid for the first time in days. "Rebecca," he rasped. Rebecca burst into tears, overcome with emotion. "Father, yes, I'm here." Joseph's gaze moved to Jack, confusion crossing his features. "Who?" "This is Jackson Evans, father. He saved my life during the blizzard. He's been helping care for you." Joseph nodded weakly. "Thank you, sir." "Rest now," Jack said. "You've had a hard fight." As Joseph drifted back to sleep a healing sleep this time, Rebecca felt the tension drain from her body, replaced by overwhelming exhaustion. She wept silently, the emotional release unstoppable. Jack placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That's just the pain leaving you," he said softly. Like the fever left him. Rebecca looked up through her tears, struck by the simple wisdom in his words. She stood and, without thinking, wrapped her arms around him. Jack hesitated only briefly before returning her embrace, his strong arms providing comfort she hadn't known she needed. In that moment, something changed for Rebecca. The man who had been a stranger just days ago now felt essential to her world. With Joseph's recovery assured, life gradually returned to normal at Blackburn Ranch. The deep snow melted into spring mud, then gave way to the vibrant green of early summer. Jack had returned to his cabin after Joseph was well enough to be up and about, but he visited regularly, becoming a familiar and welcome presence at the ranch. Joseph, grateful for the man who had helped save his life and his daughter's, offered Jack a position managing the eastern section of their property. To Rebecca's delight, Jack accepted, moving into a small cabin on the ranch that had previously housed seasonal workers. As the weeks passed, Rebecca found herself creating reasons to visit Jack's cabin, bringing meals, asking advice about cattle management, or simply stopping by on her rides around the property. Jack never seemed to mind her intrusions. In fact, she often caught him watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. One warm June evening, Rebecca rode to Jack's cabin with a basket of fresh bread and stew. She found him outside, chopping wood despite the day's heat. He paused when he saw her, wiping sweat from his brow with his forearm. "Evening, Rebecca," he called, setting down his axe. "What brings you out this way?" She held up the basket. "Thought you might like some supper that wasn't your own cooking for a change." Jack grinned, transforming his usually serious face. "Your timing's perfect. I was just thinking about what sorry meal I'd be making for myself tonight." They ate on the small porch, watching the sunset paint the Wyoming sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Jack had changed in the months since their first meeting. The somber isolation that had once surrounded him had softened. He laughed more easily now, shared stories from his past, and seemed at peace with himself in a way he hadn't before. "I'm heading to Casper tomorrow," Jack mentioned as they finished eating. "Need anything from town?" Rebecca hesitated. "Actually, would you mind if I joined you? There are some supplies I need to pick up myself." "I'd welcome the company," Jack replied, a hint of something warm in his voice that made Rebecca's cheeks flush. The journey to Casper the next day was pleasant, far different from Rebecca's last desperate trip through the blizzard. They talked easily as they rode, sharing thoughts and stories that revealed more of themselves to each other with each passing mile. In town, they separated briefly to complete their errands. Rebecca purchased fabric for new curtains, sugar, coffee, and other household necessities. As she waited for her packages to be wrapped, she noticed a display of men's pocket watches in the mercantile's glass case. On impulse, she purchased one, a simple silver timepiece with a sturdy chain. Jack had mentioned losing his watch months ago when a river crossing went wrong, and she'd noticed him checking the sun's position frequently to gauge the time. They met at the agreed spot for lunch, finding a small restaurant that served decent food. As they waited for their meal, Rebecca slid the small wrapped package across the table to Jack. "What's this?" he asked, surprise evident in his expression. "Just a small thank you," Rebecca replied, suddenly self-conscious, "for everything you've done for my father and me." Jack carefully unwrapped the package, his eyes widening when he saw the watch. He lifted it, examining the craftsmanship with obvious appreciation. "Rebecca, this is too generous," he protested softly. She shook her head. "It's not nearly enough for saving my life." Jack met her gaze, his blue eyes intense. "I didn't help you expecting payment." "It's not payment," Rebecca said. "It's a gift from a friend." Something flickered in Jack's expression at the word friend, an emotion Rebecca couldn't quite identify. He carefully pocketed the watch. "Thank you," he said simply. "I'll treasure it." Their meal arrived and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Yet something had changed between them, an unspoken awareness that hovered in the air. On the ride home, they stopped by a small creek to rest the horses. The summer afternoon was peaceful, with wildflowers dotting the grassland and birds calling from nearby cottonwoods. Rebecca removed her boots and dipped her feet in the cool water, sighing with relief. "My mother used to say there was nothing better for the soul than cool water on a hot day," she remarked, watching small fish dart around her toes. Jack settled beside her on the creek bank. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Rebecca agreed. "She taught me everything important: how to run a household, care for the sick, make something beautiful out of whatever was available." She paused, remembering. "She would have liked you." Jack looked at her curiously. "What makes you say that?" She valued kindness above all else. "Said you could tell a person's true character by how they treated others when there was nothing to gain." Rebecca smiled. You took in a half-frozen stranger during a blizzard and risked your own safety to help her father. I'd say that qualifies." Jack plucked a blade of grass, twirling it between his fingers. "I wasn't always that person," he admitted. "Before Sarah died, I was ambitious, focused on building the biggest ranch in the territory. I worked too hard, didn't spend enough time with her." Regret shadowed his features. "After she was gone, none of it mattered anymore. I realized too late what was truly valuable." Rebecca touched his arm gently. "You can't blame yourself for her death, Jack." "Not for her death, no," he agreed, "but for the moments I missed while she was alive." He looked at Rebecca directly. "That's why I don't want to make the same mistake twice." The implication in his words made Rebecca's heart skip. "What do you mean?" Jack took a deep breath. "I care for you, Rebecca, more than I thought possible after Sarah. At first, I told myself it was gratitude for bringing me back to the world of the living, but it's more than that." He hesitated. "I understand if you don't feel the same. I'm older with nothing much to offer." Rebecca stopped him by placing her hand over his. "You're wrong," she said softly. "You have everything to offer." The look that passed between them needed no words. Jack leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Instead, Rebecca met him halfway, their lips touching in a gentle, questioning kiss that quickly deepened with shared emotion. When they finally parted, Rebecca felt as though the world had shifted on its axis. Jack's eyes reflected the wonder she felt, along with something deeper, a promise of things to come. "I should have done that months ago," he murmured, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Rebecca laughed softly. "Better late than never, Mr. Evans." The ride back to the ranch was filled with a new awareness of each other. Their hands brushed more frequently, their glances lingered longer. By the time they reached Blackburn Ranch, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the land. Joseph was sitting on the porch, smoking his pipe. He observed their arrival with knowing eyes, noting how close their horses walked, how Jack assisted Rebecca from her saddle with lingering hands. "Good trip to town?" he called as they approached. "Very good," Rebecca replied, unable to keep the happiness from her voice. Later that evening, after Jack had returned to his cabin, Joseph called Rebecca to sit with him by the fire. "So," he said, puffing on his pipe, "you and Evans." Rebecca felt her cheeks warm. "Is it that obvious?" Joseph chuckled, "to anyone with eyes." His expression grew serious. "He's a good man, Becca. I've watched him these past months. Works hard, speaks honestly, treats everyone with respect." He paused. "Your mother would approve." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes at her father's words. "I think so too." "He asked my permission to court you properly," Joseph continued. "Did it the old-fashioned way, hat in hand, looking nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs." "He did." Rebecca couldn't hide her surprise or her pleasure. Joseph nodded. "Said he doesn't take it lightly, asking to court a woman he respects as much as you. Said he knows what it means to lose someone precious and doesn't enter into such things without serious intentions." He reached over to pat Rebecca's hand. "I gave him my blessing, of course." Rebecca impulsively hugged her father, breathing in his familiar scent of tobacco and leather. "Thank you." Joseph returned her embrace awkwardly but sincerely. "Your happiness is what matters to me, Becca." "After your mother." "Well, I wasn't much of a father for a time. You deserved better." "You did your best," Rebecca assured him. "We both grieved in our own ways." "Maybe so," Joseph conceded, "but you were stronger than I was. You kept this ranch going when I couldn't." He looked at her with pride. "You're like your mother that way, backbone of steel beneath all that beauty." The following weeks brought a flowering of romance between Rebecca and Jack. True to his word, Jack courted her properly, bringing wildflower bouquets, taking her on picnics by the creek, and spending evenings on the porch swing talking until the stars wheeled overhead. Rebecca discovered new facets of Jack with each passing day. His quiet strength remained, but she also found unexpected humor, a love of poetry that seemed at odds with his rugged exterior, and a gentleness that emerged fully when they were alone. By August, their feelings for each other were common knowledge throughout the area. Jack had integrated himself fully into ranch operations, earning the respect of not just Joseph and Henrik, but the seasonal hands as well. The Blackburn Ranch prospered under their combined leadership, with Rebecca's practical knowledge of the business complementing Jack's innovative ideas for expanding their operations. One crisp autumn evening, Jack invited Rebecca for a ride to his favorite spot on the property, a high ridge overlooking the valley, with mountains purple in the distance. He spread a blanket on the ground and they watched the sunset together, Rebecca leaning back against his chest, his arms wrapped securely around her. "I never thought I'd find this again," Jack said quietly, his breath warm against her hair. "Find what?" Rebecca asked, though she suspected she knew. "Home," he replied simply. "Not a place, but a feeling, belonging somewhere, belonging to someone." Rebecca turned in his arms to face him. "I feel it too." Jack's expression was solemn as he reached into his pocket. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment," he said, producing a small wooden box. "I'm not sure there is a perfect moment, but I can't wait any longer." Rebecca's heart pounded as Jack opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring set with a small, perfect diamond. "It was my grandmother's," he explained. "My mother gave it to me before she died, said I should save it for when I found the right woman." He took a deep breath. "Rebecca Blackburn, I love you with everything I am. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears sprang to Rebecca's eyes as joy surged through her. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Jackson Evans, I will marry you." Jack slid the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, then pulled her close for a kiss that sealed their promise to each other. Their wedding took place on a perfect October day, with the aspens turning gold against the blue Wyoming sky. The ceremony was held at the ranch, with neighbors and friends gathered to witness their vows. Joseph, looking healthier than he had in years, proudly walked his daughter down the aisle they had created between rows of chairs set up in the meadow. Rebecca wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit her taller frame. Jack stood waiting for her, cleaned up and handsome in a new suit, his expression one of awe as she approached. Henrik served as best man, grinning broadly beneath his mustache, while Rachel Miller, Rebecca's childhood friend, stood as her maid of honor. The local minister performed the ceremony, his words almost unnecessary as the love between the bride and groom was visible to everyone present. When Jack and Rebecca were pronounced husband and wife, their kiss prompted cheers and a few good-natured whistles from the ranch hands. The celebration continued well into the evening, with dancing in the barn to fiddle music, plenty of food, and flowing whiskey. Joseph surprised everyone by delivering a heartfelt toast that left few dry eyes. "To my daughter, who has her mother's beauty and twice her spirit," he said, raising his glass. "And to Jack, the man who brought light back into both our lives, may your years together be many and filled with joy." As darkness fell, the newlyweds slipped away from the festivities to begin their life together. Joseph had gifted them a section of the ranch and helped build a new house not large, but sturdy and well-crafted, with plenty of room for the family they both hoped to create. Their first night as husband and wife was filled with tenderness and discovery. Jack's gentle reverence as he undressed her made Rebecca feel both cherished and desired. Their lovemaking was hesitant at first, then increasingly passionate as they learned each other's bodies. Afterward, lying in Jack's arms, Rebecca felt a contentment that seemed to fill every corner of her being. "What are you thinking?" Jack asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Rebecca smiled in the darkness. "That I never expected to be this happy." "That makes two of us," Jack replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "When Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. I never imagined I would find someone who could make me feel whole again." "Do you think she would mind," Rebecca asked softly, "that you found love again?" Jack was quiet for a moment. "No," he said finally. "Sarah had a generous heart. She would want me to be happy." He tightened his arm around Rebecca, "And she would have liked you very much." "I wish I could have known her," Rebecca said sincerely. "In some ways you do," Jack replied. Through the ways she changed me, just as I know your mother through you." Rebecca nestled closer to him, thinking how true that was. The people we love shape us, remain part of us even after they're gone. Perhaps that was a kind of immortality living on in the hearts of those who loved us. Winter arrived early that year, bringing heavy snow by mid-November. The newly married couple settled into a comfortable routine, with Jack overseeing ranch operations alongside Joseph and Rebecca managing the household while helping with bookkeeping and planning. Their evenings were spent in cozy domesticity, reading aloud to each other, playing chess, or simply talking by the fire. In January, Rebecca discovered she was with child. She told Jack one evening as they sat before the hearth. His reaction, everything she could have hoped for: joy, wonder, and tender concern for her well-being. "Are you certain?" he asked, his hand gently covering her still flat stomach. Rebecca nodded. "The doctor in Casper confirmed it yesterday when I went to town with Henrik. We're going to have a baby in late summer." Jack gathered her into his arms, laughing and crying at once. "A baby," he repeated, as if testing the reality of the word. "Our baby." The months that followed were filled with preparations and anticipation. Jack proved himself an attentive husband, alternately pampering Rebecca and respecting her determination to continue with her responsibilities as long as possible. Joseph was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandfather, even taking up woodworking again to create a cradle for the expected child. Spring brought new challenges as heavy rainfall caused the nearby river to flood, threatening portions of their grazing land. Jack worked tirelessly with the ranch hands to protect their livestock and property, coming home exhausted but satisfied each evening. Rebecca worried about him pushing himself too hard, but admired his dedication to their shared future. By June, Rebecca's pregnancy was well advanced, her belly round beneath her dresses. The summer heat made her uncomfortable, but she remained active, supervising the vegetable garden and preserving its bounty for the coming winter. Jack insisted she rest during the hottest part of the day, often sitting beside her, reading aloud or discussing names for their child. On a sweltering August afternoon, Rebecca felt the first pains. Jack was out checking cattle with Henrik, and Joseph had ridden to a neighboring ranch. Alone in the house, Rebecca remained calm, knowing that first babies often took their time. She prepared as best she could, setting water to boil and gathering clean linens. By the time Jack returned home, her labor was well established. His face paled at the sight of her leaning against the kitchen table, breathing through a contraction. "I'll fetch the doctor," he said immediately, turning toward the door. "No time," Rebecca gasped as the contraction eased. "Send Henrik. You need to stay with me." Jack hesitated only briefly before nodding. He gave instructions to Henrik, then returned to Rebecca's side, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. "Tell me what to do," he said simply. Together, they moved to their bedroom. Jack helped Rebecca change into a clean nightgown, then positioned pillows to support her back. The contractions intensified, coming faster as the hours passed. Jack remained steady, wiping her brow with cool cloths, supporting her through each wave of pain, murmuring encouragement when she felt her strength failing. Night fell with still no sign of the doctor. Rebecca's labor progressed relentlessly, her cries growing more desperate as the pain became overwhelming. Jack's calm facade cracked only once, when he saw tears streaming down her face during a particularly brutal contraction. "I can't bear to see you suffering," he whispered, his voice breaking. Rebecca clutched his hand. "Stay strong for me," she managed. "I need you." Jack nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm here, I won't leave you." Near midnight, Rebecca felt an overwhelming urge to push. Jack positioned himself to help, following her instructions and what little he remembered from his first wife's labor. Rebecca fought through exhaustion and pain, drawing on reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. With a final, tremendous effort, their child entered the world, a healthy boy with a lusty cry that filled the room. Jack's hands trembled as he cut the cord and wrapped the infant in clean linens before placing him on Rebecca's chest. "A son," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Rebecca, we have a son." Rebecca wept as she held their child for the first time, overwhelmed by love for the tiny being they had created together. Jack sat beside them on the bed, one arm around Rebecca, the other hand gently touching the baby's downy head. "He's perfect," Rebecca whispered. Jack pressed his lips to her temple. "Like his mother." The doctor arrived shortly after, checking both mother and child before pronouncing them healthy. Joseph appeared at dawn, having returned to find Henrik waiting anxiously on the porch. The sight of his grandson brought tears to the older man's eyes as he clapped Jack on the shoulder in wordless congratulation. They named the boy Thomas Joseph Evans, honoring both Jack's father and Rebecca's. As the summer faded into autumn, Rebecca recovered her strength, embracing motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything in life. Jack proved to be an involved father, often carrying Thomas while he performed his less strenuous ranch duties, telling the infant about cattle and horses long before he could understand. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges. The ranch prospered under their combined management, eventually becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Joseph remained active in ranch affairs well into his 70s, delighting in watching his grandson grow. 2 years after Thomas, Rebecca gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth Sarah, combining the names of both their mothers. She inherited Rebecca's spirited nature and Jack's thoughtful blue eyes, becoming the perfect complement to her more serious older brother. When Thomas was 6 and Elizabeth 4, Joseph passed peacefully in his sleep one winter night. Though grieved by the loss, Rebecca found comfort in knowing her father had lived to see her happy and secure, surrounded by a family who loved him. Jack supported her through her mourning, understanding the depth of her loss from his own experiences. The Blackburn Evans Ranch continued to thrive, becoming known for both its quality livestock and the fairness with which it treated workers. Jack and Rebecca established a school on their property, ensuring their children and those of their ranch hands received proper education despite their remote location. As the frontier gradually transformed around them, with Wyoming achieving statehood and more settlers arriving each year, Jack and Rebecca remained constants in their community, respected, admired, and deeply in love. Their home became a gathering place for neighbors, a haven for travelers, and the heart of their expanding family. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Jack surprised Rebecca with a special gift, a locket containing miniature portraits of their children on one side and the two of them on the other. They celebrated with a quiet dinner after the children had gone to bed, reminiscing about the blizzard that had brought them together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found your cabin that night?" Rebecca asked, her hand finding his across the table. Jack's fingers tightened around hers. "I try not to," he admitted. "The thought of never knowing you, never having our children." He shook his head. "Some things are meant to be, Rebecca. We were meant to find each other. Even through a blizzard," she smiled. "Even through a blizzard," he agreed, raising her hand to his lips. As they sat together on their porch that evening, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast Wyoming sky, Rebecca leaned against Jack's shoulder, content in the life they had built together. From desperate beginnings had come enduring love, a journey neither had expected but both treasured beyond measure. Jack's arm tightened around her as if reading her thoughts. "Happy anniversary, my love," he whispered. Rebecca turned her face up to his, seeing in his eyes the same devotion that had sustained them through 2 decades of marriage. "Every day with you has been a blessing," she replied softly. Their lips met in a kiss as sweet and promising as their first, a testament to a love that had not merely endured but deepened with the passing years. And as the evening stars witnessed their embrace, Rebecca knew with absolute certainty that the fever of fear and loneliness had broken for both of them long ago. leaving only the warmth of enduring love in its place.